Positioning over on the right hand side. Now if you look right over the top of the pier, I'm expecting to arrive in his trademark format, which is on his side in a knife edge pass around about 100 feet or so, and then he'll put some smoke on, and that is his hello and welcome. Here he goes now. Yes, classic start in the brand new aircraft J-Pids coming from the right hand side. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome Richard Goodwin. That's a pretty stunning start, and it just gets better as he winds up this aircraft into a scintillating, a stunning series of maneuvers in the sky, pulling G in excessive amounts during go, starting off very benignly there with a very straightforward barrel roll. That's basically flying the aircraft around the ice outside of a great big beer barrel, and quite graceful that is too, isn't it? Super new colour scheme, as I say. Now, before I go on to that, the history of these aircraft actually goes back an enormously long way, back to the mid-1940s with a guy called Curtis Pitts, and he came up with this light aerobatic biplane design, and it pretty much dominated the world aerobatic scene from the 1960s and 70s, and even today remains a potent competitor amongst aerobatic competitions and aerobatic pilots as well. And you can see here now, using the residual power, virtually hanging on to what's left of that engine, almost hovering the aircraft, holding it on the propeller. If he holds there long enough, he'll go into a gyroscopic effect, but he's not. He's just pushed it a little bit over the top there. And of course, he is still getting to know this airplane, although he's been involved in flight testing. First flew this one only in February of this year. But going back to the 40s, Curtis Pitts actually began development of this aircraft in 1943, and it's been refined continuously pretty much ever since. Made famous by a lady called Betty Skelton. She nicknamed her early Pitts Special as the Little Stinker, and if you're ever across in Washington, it's currently hanging upside down there in the Smithsonian, is the position it really ought to be in. As he gets to the top there, you can see he does an awful lot of maneuvers, flicking it and rolling it there as best he can, with some pretty dramatic maneuvers in the cockpit with both the stick and the rudders all at the same time. Of course, you have to train really hard for this sort of thing. It's physically very, very demanding, not just on the aircraft, of course, but also on the pilot, because now he's in negative G territory where all the blood is rushing to his head, and while he's doing that, he's enduring that for a longer period by staying inverted and then using the rudders to bend the aircraft around in an outside turn. The original aircraft were powered by tiny little engines, 90 horsepower in the 40s, but then of course as they improved their aerobatic ability, so did the standard engine size increase right up to 180 horsepower. But now Richard works with little less than 300 horsepower on all his little aerobatic biplanes. Started off in a Christian Eagle, standard stall turn there, but then he tumbles it over in a pinwheel style maneuver where he turns it on its side rather than either flat or inverted. Some of you may remember the famous British Pitts Special aerobatic teams, such as the Rothmans team, and the involvement of the likes of Brian Lacombe. Really famous names who did some lovely, look at that, throwing that into a few more rolls and tumbles there as well. He just never gets, what can we say, gets to fly in a straight line very long, gets bored very quickly. Strength of this aircraft all in the wiring of those two wings that you can see. And these are a relatively new wing design as well, as he develops the aircraft up into a big S. They're called saw blade wings. They're designed by Eddie Sorenman. And I know Rich has been working very, very closely with him. He's a brilliant and innovative aircraft designer. And he's given long-term support to Richard, the aim of really generating these aircraft into areas that they've yet to discover. It's powered by a modified Lycoming 0540 with cylinders and a prop supplied by MT Prop. Brings the standard aero engine well into the 21st century, and with Formula One technology clearly giving it greatly improved performance. It's also 25 pounds lighter than the engine on his other aircraft, G-Whiz, which you have seen, the bright red aircraft he normally flies, but giving him a bit more power as well. The rate of roll there, really winding it up, and those wings giving him an even greater rate of roll than he had on his other aircraft. He's got some way to go yet before he actually fits the little jet engines to this aircraft, but he's certainly very happy with his performance so far, and supported by his #1 sponsor, Anana, and also with their involvement in some of the STEM programs involving young apprentices. He's really looking forward to adding 2 AMT jet turbines, which will be a pretty interesting new display. We get to the top of a climb like that and then put in a couple of flick rolls and tumbles. That's what we call a lomchevak, Czechoslovakian for a headache. And I can assure you that can be a fairly confusing set of manoeuvres. That's why you have to train so hard for these sort of things. Plus 6G, for example, which you'll be pulling during the course of this display, 6 times your body weight. And it's very hard to manoeuvre your arms or legs during the course of that sort of pressure. And then the negative value is obviously clearly reversed, and although you can stretch your body to withstand the rigors of positive G, there's not much you can do about negative G at all. Just have to train for it, and of course after 10 minutes of this you really do need a break, right up there with a couple of Formula One drivers in terms of their preparation. You see, almost with very little airspeed left, they're still able to put in a couple of rolls. The other thing he's doing is using all this altitude. At the moment he's just giving it a bit of a cooling down period on the engine, checking once again halfway through the display, checking that everything with the engine performance is absolutely spot on before going into the next round of manoeuvres. And this is the start of what he calls the Tower of Power. He'll put the smoke on in just a moment. On his dive down, he's not just building up the speed, but of course he's using all the weight of the aircraft as well as the engine power as well, so that he can then transform all that energy on the upward slope. So this is the downward slope, and I told you he gets bored flying in a straight line, regularly puts in lots of rolls, but now using all this speed coming up now, and he'll use all this energy, he'll transform that, pulling very shortly, 4, 5G, G coming on a bit stronger now pointing it upwards towards the sky, he's rolling it the other way, and he just let the speed decay and hold it there until he runs out of forward speed altogether, gyroscopically turning the aircraft on what's left of the propeller rotation, and then just letting it tumble back down now through its own smoke, rolling it as he does that, and then the power comes back on again. Pretty standard practice for most pilots who get into aviation to do aerobatic maneuvers as part of their training. Of course, it's perfectly normal. It's not necessarily just doing trick or stunt flying. It is part of understanding how the airplane operates and what its limits are, and also you train how to recover should your aircraft end up in an unusual position for whatever reason. Getting in a bit of a slide, you can see as he gets higher there, the drift increases as well. Much stronger wind up above 2,000 feet and above. Got to say, you probably can't see the difference, but there's quite a dramatic difference between this and his normal aircraft. Those new saw wings just slightly curved back, adding a real dimension and style to this, and clearly he's enjoying the extra roll performance that he's getting out of this, as well as the new engine as well. It's a great design, a beautiful paint scheme as well. Once again, holding it up there, letting the airspeed decay, this time just pushing it over. And controlled roll rather than spinning the aircraft out this time. Again, all pilots taught to spin their aircraft so that if they know how to get into it, they know how to get out of it. And it's absolutely critical part of flight training. Richard now saying that is just about enough for him on this particular display. Real pleasure, and I think you're amongst the first people to see this new aircraft. I've little doubt that his farewell now will be a classic knife edge pass again at 100 feet with the smoke on. So what we'd like you to do amongst, with all the pilots here today, is a good chance for you to show your appreciation. They can certainly see you, they can't necessarily hear you. All you got to do is do your best to give them a wave every time they come down the fly line. Whatever you've got, hats, coats, umbrellas, ice creams, and just give them a fantastic big wave, because I know they do appreciate that. And as I say, we pass on as best we can. We have a morning briefing with all the pilots to make sure they both get feedback, and of course also understand all the parameters for displaying here. So here comes now Richard Goodwin in the pits, a brand new one, J pit. So from the right to the left as he comes back over the pier, please, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, give him a massive southport wave off. Fabulous stuff.